If you agree that some fires never die out, no matter how much time passes, make sure to like and subscribe, because this story is proof of it. They found it in a shoebox, hidden behind winter coats that hadn't been worn in years. The young cousin who stumbled on it thought it was nothing, just folded cloth and faded photographs. But when the lid came off, what lay inside made everyone stop. There, neatly pressed as if waiting for its day, was a Navy uniform. The insignia wasn't one you saw on movie posters or hanging in surplus stores. It belonged to someone who had walked with shadows, carried secrets, and disappeared quietly when her time was done. And tucked into the side pocket of that uniform was a letter, its edges worn, but its ink still sharp. It bore the signature of a general, the kind of name whispered, not spoken. That's when the family realized Natalie Vega's story wasn't over. It had only been paused. Natalie wasn't born into the military. She was born into the chaos of a desert town that forgot its children as quickly as it forgot its storms. By 16, she'd already learned that the world didn't hand you anything. You either fought for it or it slipped through your fingers. Her teachers said she was too intense. Her coaches said she was too fast, and her friends, what few she had, said she carried a stare that didn't belong to a teenager. When most girls her age were choosing prom dresses, Natalie was studying recruitment flyers, circling words like duty, precision, honor. She signed her contract at 18, her hands shaking not with fear, but with anticipation. While others flinched at the thought of boot camp, she leaned into the grind. Mud, sweat, exhaustion, she welcomed them like old friends. Every push-up, every sprint, every bruised knuckle wasn't punishment. It was freedom. By the time she was 20, she was fluent in discipline, fluent in silence, and fluent in the kind of loyalty you can't fake. Her path wasn't glamorous. She didn't storm beaches or get medals pinned in front of flashing cameras. Instead, she worked in rooms where the lights stayed dim, where walls hummed with machinery, and where men with names erased from history handed her files too heavy for anyone else to carry. She specialized in intelligence support, bridging gaps between analysts and soldiers, giving missions their heartbeat. Her records never said it outright, but the SEALs knew her by name. She became the quiet fix, the one you called when the line between survival and disaster was thin as a hair. But intensity like that takes its toll. By 22, Natalie had already seen enough to last lifetimes. Missions that ended before they began. Friends who vanished into silence, their names never spoken again. Nights when she lay awake, staring at ceilings that never felt like her own, asking if the weight she carried was worth it. And when she was 24, she walked away. No fanfare, no farewell speech. She folded her uniform, sealed her medals in a box, and swore never to wear them again. Civilian life should have been easier. She tried. She really did. She got work as a fitness trainer, her body still carved by discipline. Parents thanked her for pushing their kids on the track field, for teaching them grit. But while they went home to dinners and TV shows, Natalie went home to silence. She'd line up her shoes by the door with military precision, double-check her locks 3 times, and sit in the dark wondering if she'd ever feel like she belonged. Every time she caught herself scanning crowds for exits or memorizing license plates, she reminded herself, that part of you is gone. You left it behind. And yet, the fire never left her eyes. It just smoldered, quiet, like embers under ash. The call came 4 years later. She was 28. She almost didn't pick up, but something in her gut told her she should. The voice on the other end was steady, familiar. A SEAL commander she hadn't heard from in years. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. He simply said, "We need you. It's not about orders, it's about trust. And right now, you're the only one I trust with this." Natalie froze. Every muscle in her body tensed, like the years had folded in on themselves. She looked at the shoebox in her closet, the one she hadn't touched since the day she walked away, the one with the uniform pressed inside. Her promise to herself came rushing back. Never again. Never put it on. Never look back. But promises are fragile when the people you once bled beside call for help. And as Natalie sat in that dim apartment, the sun setting behind her blinds, she realized the truth. She hadn't left it behind. She had just been waiting. And when she finally pulled the shoebox out, unwrapping the fabric that still smelled faintly of sweat and sea air, she caught her reflection in the mirror. She didn't see a civilian. She didn't see a trainer. She saw the woman who once carried missions across continents. The woman who once whispered codes that saved lives. And this time, she didn't flinch. The fire was still there, and it was brighter than ever. The SEALs don't make casual phone calls. And when Natalie Vega answered, she knew it wasn't a favor, it was a lifeline. Still, she sat in silence as the commander spoke, his voice carrying both urgency and something she had almost forgotten: respect. "There's an operation underway," he said. "Complicated. Fragile. And right now, it's slipping through our fingers." Natalie leaned against her counter, her hands tightening around the phone. She didn't ask why me. She didn't have to. He answered anyway. "You were always the one who saw what the rest of us missed. We've got top brass, top shooters, but what we don't have is someone who can thread the needle between chaos and order. This isn't a battlefield call. It's an intelligence call. And I need you." For a moment, Natalie's apartment felt smaller than the bunk rooms she used to live in. The hum of her fridge seemed louder than any distant helicopter. She looked down at the calendar pinned on her wall. Clients' workout sessions scribbled in ink, birthdays of kids she barely knew. It all felt flimsy, a thin curtain pretending to be a life. Her silence stretched. Finally, she asked, "What's the mission?" The commander's answer was blunt: extraction. A team embedded deep overseas. Their comms are dark. Intel says they're still alive, but the window is closing. We need someone who can process the fragments, find the pattern, and give us a way in. Natalie's breath caught. She knew what he wasn't saying. If the pattern wasn't found, if she didn't help, those operators would disappear into the dust. And she'd have to live knowing she was the one who could have changed it. But fear clawed at her too. For years. For years since she'd opened a classified file. Since she'd spoken in the clipped language of operations. Since she'd trusted her instincts over the safety of a civilian routine. She wasn't 22 anymore. She wasn't even sure if the fire was discipline or just the echo of who she used to be. That night, she spread papers across her kitchen table. Maps, coded messages, blurred satellite prints the commander had sent over encrypted lines. Old instincts woke like muscles she hadn't stretched in years. She circled patterns, jotted down threads, and realized something both terrifying and exhilarating. Her mind still worked the way it always had. Fast, sharp, dangerous. Hours bled into morning. When dawn light pushed through her blinds, Natalie sat surrounded by a battlefield made of paper. Coffee cups half drained, notes stacked high, her hair tied back with the same precision she once wore under Kevlar. And on her face, that old look was back, the one her friends had called a stare that could cut through steel. Still, saying yes was different than feeling ready. She needed to move. So, she went to the gym before it opened. The moment her shoes hit the treadmill, she felt it. Her legs remembered. Her lungs burned, but they welcomed the fire. She lifted, sprinted, pushed until sweat soaked through her shirt. And when she stopped, doubled over and gasping, she realized she hadn't felt this alive in years. That's when she knew she was going back. Not because she was ordered, not because she wanted glory, but because she couldn't live with herself if she didn't. The next step wasn't easy. She opened the shoebox again, her hands trembling as she pulled the uniform free. The fabric was heavier than she remembered, carrying the weight of every mission she once endured. She slid her arms through the sleeves, zipped it up, and stared in the mirror. A different woman looked back. Not the young recruit with something to prove, but someone older, sharper, scarred, and stronger for it. Her phone buzzed. The commander again. "We've got wheels up in 48 hours. If you're in, be ready." Natalie didn't hesitate this time. "Send me the full brief," she said. "I'll be there." 2 days later, she walked across the tarmac of a restricted airfield, the engines of transport, planes roaring like thunder. She caught the looks from younger operators, curiosity, maybe doubt. To them, she was a ghost, someone who had left and somehow returned. But the fire in her eyes silenced their questions. She didn't need to explain herself. Inside the command tent, maps covered the walls. Red lines, shifting markers, and photos pinned with urgency. The room buzzed with voices until Natalie stepped in. Then it quieted. The commander gestured toward her. "You all know the situation. But what you don't know is that the only reason we have a chance to bring our people home is standing right here." Natalie swallowed hard, not from nerves, but from the weight of it all. She wasn't a ghost anymore. She was the weapon they needed, the fire they had called back from the dark. She spread her notes on the table, explaining her analysis. The fragments weren't random. They were patterns left intentionally by the trap team, breadcrumbs buried in static. She pointed to satellite shots, linking supply routes to hidden signals. Her words carried the calm precision of someone who had lived this world before. The operators leaned in, nodding, the doubt fading from their eyes. By the end of the briefing, the plan was clear. A narrow window, a dangerous route, and only one chance to pull it off. When the meeting broke, Natalie stepped outside into the cold night air. The engines hummed in the distance, the stars sharp overhead. She tilted her head back, breathing it in. 4 years of silence, 4 years of trying to be someone else. And now here she was again, standing on the edge of something that could cost everything. But this time, she wasn't afraid. The fire was burning too bright. The desert at night is colder than most imagine. Sand shifts like water, winds scrape across rock, and the silence is broken only by the hum of engines and the hiss of radios. For Natalie Vega, standing at the edge of the transport bay with her boots strapped and her headset tight, it felt eerily familiar, like she had never left. The commander's voice crackled through her earpiece. Eyes sharp. We're going in low. The signal's weak, but it's there. Vega, you're our anchor. Once we hit dirt, you lead the pattern. Natalie gripped the straps beside her, steadying her breath. She wasn't carrying a rifle like the others. Her weapon was her mind. The maps memorized, the codes decrypted, the paths only she could see. Still, the weight in her chest was no lighter than theirs. Lives were on the line. The plane banked hard. Red light filled the bay. Doors opened. Air rushed in, freezing against sweat. And then boots slammed into sand. They moved fast, cutting through the desert like shadows. Natalie crouched behind cover, pulling out her tablet linked to a satellite feed. The signal was faint, buried in noise, but she recognized it. A sequence she'd spotted nights ago. Not random, not accidental. A call for help. This way, she whispered, pointing northeast. The team followed without question. Through dry ravines, over jagged ridges, their breath clouding in the cold. Every few minutes, she stopped, recalculated, and adjusted course. The men glanced at her with something more than respect now. It was reliance. She wasn't just analyzing. She was leading. Hours blurred. The desert tested their endurance, but Natalie's fire never dimmed. Each step forward was fueled by the faces she remembered from years past. The ones she couldn't save, the ones she still dreamed about. Tonight, she wasn't going to fail. Finally, at the edge of a ruined compound, the signal spiked. The commander raised a fist. The squad froze, dropping to their knees. Night vision lit the landscape in eerie green. Shapes moved in the distance, too many to count. Hostiles, one of the SEALs muttered. Natalie scanned the feed. Our people are inside. West Wing. They're weak, but alive. The commander turned to her. Options. She swallowed, her mind racing. The enemy was dug in, expecting an approach from the south. But she saw it. The faint shimmer of disturbed sand leading toward a collapsed wall. A blind spot. Dangerous, but possible. She looked him dead in the eye. We take the breach. It's narrow, but it'll get us to them before the enemy realizes. There was no debate. He nodded once. You lead. They moved low, silent, slipping through shadows. Natalie's pulse thundered, but her steps were steady. At the wall, she crawled first, guiding them through the broken stone. Inside, the air was suffocating, smoke, dust, sweat. She pushed deeper until her light caught movement. 3 men, battered but breathing. SEALs. Their uniforms torn, their eyes glazed with exhaustion. But when they saw Natalie and the team behind her, something sparked. Relief. Hope. She crouched, pressing a hand to one soldier's shoulder. You're going home, she whispered. The extraction was chaos. Alarms blared. Hostiles realized too late, swarming the compound. Gunfire erupted, sharp and endless. The squad moved with lethal precision. But it was Natalie's pathfinding that kept them alive, leading them through corridors, diverting them from traps, pushing them toward the night air. Outside, the firefight raged. Tracers lit the sky. One of the rescued SEALs stumbled, nearly collapsing, but Natalie caught him under the arm, dragging him forward with a strength she didn't know she still had. She wasn't just the mind anymore. She was in the fight. At the ridge, the X-filled bird roared into view, kicking up sand. The commander's voice boomed. Move, move, move. Bullets snapped past them. Natalie shoved the weakened soldier onto the ramp, then turned back, scanning for stragglers. One operator lagged behind, pinned by fire. Without hesitation, she sprinted back, sliding into cover beside him. Her breath came fast, her hands trembling, but her eyes burned with resolve. She locked eyes with him. "On three," she said. "1, 2, 3. They ran, gunfire shredding the ground behind them, and dove onto the ramp just as the bird lifted. The hatch slammed shut. The desert shrank beneath them. Inside, silence fell except for the rasp of breathing. The rescued SEALs lay slumped but alive. The squad leaned back, spent but unbroken. And in the center, Natalie sat with her hands still shaking, her heart still pounding. The commander looked at her across the cabin, his expression unreadable, until he gave a single nod. Respect, gratitude, recognition. Natalie exhaled, finally allowing herself to feel the weight of what had just happened. For years away, for years trying to bury the fire. But tonight proved the truth. It had never gone out. Hours later, back at base, the team dispersed. Medics rushed the rescued operators to care. The commander found her outside, leaning against the cold steel of a Humvee, her eyes locked on the horizon. "You saved them," he said simply. Natalie shook her head. "We did." He studied her for a long moment. "You know this doesn't have to be the end. We could use you again." She didn't answer right away. The night air was sharp, filling her lungs with clarity. She thought about the shoebox in her closet, about the uniform she swore she'd never wear again. She thought about the kids she coached, about the quiet life she'd tried to build. And then she thought about tonight, the fire, the purpose, the undeniable truth of who she really was. Finally, she turned to him, her eyes burning bright. "Call me if you need me. You know I'll answer." And with that, she walked into the darkness, her silhouette steady, her steps unshaken. No longer a ghost, no longer hiding. A warrior reborn, with fire in her eyes that would never die out.